What keyword ranking strategies are you currently using? The entire goal for ranking is how many orders can we possibly get through that one specific search term. Now, I know there's a lot of talk in our space around like, oh, target like long tail search variations of the keyword and all that stuff. That does help. It's not going to have the most impact. So the most impact for any ranking keyword is going to be getting orders specifically through that search, getting a lot of orders. So we don't just want one, we want a lot. And also making sure that our click-through rate and our conversion rate are really high on those key terms. So I'll be honest with you, the biggest impact on ranking you can have is really by picking the right keywords. So if your question was, how do I figure out what keywords do I rank on? I would say like look for things that you can afford to spend a lot, i.e. you're not losing money, meaning ACoS isn't like so crazy high that you can't afford it. You want to look for things that you have really good conversion rates. Bonus points if you have good click-through rates here, but I would go for conversion rates over click-through rates. And then you just want to like put money towards that. Now, if you say, how do I rank on this specific keyword, then that question is a little bit different. And I'm just going to tell you like push volume. Now, what I recognize is that me saying, hey, push volume through a one specific search might mean that that's not super profitable. So that's where I'm saying like the real trick is going to lie in the actual targets that you select to rank on. Other things, some pro tips and some pro hacks are more advanced but can be helpful here, is if you have a specific search where it's like crazy expensive and you just don't really have the budget for it. Again, that goes back to keyword selection. Make sure you're selecting keywords where you can afford to spend that budget on it. But if we're on a specific keyword, you want to make sure that you're showing high enough in search that you can really get those good conversions and get those eyeballs on the product. But maybe you can't afford a ton of clicks because there's a lot of clicks and they're really expensive. Use the budget as sort of a lever to cap or meter how much money you are spending for that ranking play. Now, how effective that is going to be how many orders your market is making, and that's relative. So when I talk about trying to get a large amount of orders, it's relative to the other competition that is on that particular search page. Hello, and welcome back to another weekly episode of Ask Junglr. I'm super excited I say this every single week, and I probably said that same phrase about saying I say this every single week, but it is truly one of my favorite days of the week because I get to show up here and talk about Amazon advertising and nothing but Amazon advertising for an entire hour, which seems like a lot. And it is, but I always get such great feedback about how valuable this is. I hear that people watch replays. Honestly, sorry you have to listen to me talk for so long, but I hope it is very valuable. And for those of you who are just listening in, who are not sure, hey, my name is Elizabeth Greene. I'm one of the co-founders of an Amazon ads agency called Junglr. So we specifically work on what we call more founder-led brands, or brands that are really looking to scale. What I find a lot of times is that if you have a couple products, it's honestly most of the time my recommendation is like, hey, run ads. You can totally get a handle on it. You can leverage shows like this to kind of get the biggest bang for your buck. I know there's a lot of thought of like, well, I'm just starting out. I can either pay somebody to do it where, I can kind of start off on the right foot. I know that can be a good strategy, but also know like if you just have one product, then it's pretty easy to sink your teeth into it. Honestly, then you start scaling that up. So then you get 2 products. You're like, okay, cool. Let me roll out this strategy. And then you have 3 products. And I talk to brands all the time. They're like, look, I've had a couple people in here. There's been a lot of cooks in the kitchen. I don't even know what is where anymore. All of a sudden it's spinning out of control. You got 15, 20, 30 products. You're like, how do I take this strategy and make sure it's implemented across a large scale? That's honestly where our agency comes in. So the thing that we've gotten really dang good at, if I can toot my own horn. And honestly, I'm not even tooting my own horn. It's 110% the team that is behind me. Like I'm just the face. at this point. I'm not even really the one like truly implementing anymore. And I'm honestly learning from my team. Like a lot of these strategies and things that I'm going to share, I'm seeing some questions around like launch strategy and things. A lot of those are developed specifically for my team. Like I'm kind of an actively sort of working to like understand and make sure that I'm dispersing knowledge through shows like this, but then also internally. But my team is the one who's really driving a lot of the innovations when it comes to strategies these days, which honestly, as a founder, is super exciting. I don't like to get in rooms where I'm the smartest one in the room. And to be honest, I'm no longer the smartest one in the room when it comes to like our agency, which is really exciting for me to say, to be honest. And so with that, I guess I'm seeing some questions in the chat. Jack saying hi, Sergey saying hi to you as well. Excited to have you on board. So again, format of this is drop whatever Amazon ad questions you have into the chat. I will pull them up and we will jam out, get you answers to your most pressing questions so you can run effective advertising. And I will say this, most times, a lot of these days, the chat starts going a million miles a minute towards the end. So yes, I'm going to be here for roughly an hour. I am going to have to skew it maybe about 5 minutes early, seeing as I do have a call butting up against this one. However, if you want to get an Amazon ad question answered, make sure you drop the chat sooner rather than later. And with that, this is a really great question because it is one that I've kind of lost a back and forth on. So maybe we could talk about the evolution of advertising launch strategy on Amazon because it's really fascinating is what we found. But the question is like, what do you recommend? Why do you recommend specifically exact match at launch? I've heard from some other experts that it might be better to launch with auto and broad match and that it's cheaper. Let's talk about that because I think there's it's a lot of times what I find in the Amazon ad space, and everybody's going to have their strategies and there's going to be differences of opinion. I have some pretty strong opinions on things. I do think I'm right, although I do change my tune when I find out I'm wrong as well. But there seems to be like this all or nothing. Like it's either exact match is the best thing since sliced bread. I've actually been on some debates where some people are going so far as to do only single keyword exact match campaigns for like their entire account. That's the entire strategy being run. And then there's some other ones where it's like, hey, broad match gets you lower CPCs. Like let's all use broad match. And it seems to be whatever the particular poster or somebody wants to like drive engagement for their ideas. So they'll take some sort of a very hardline and controversial view. Honestly, I'm not above it. I'm not above using clickbait myself. So there is that factor. But what I would say is that it has to do with what is the goal that we're trying to achieve and what is the best tool to achieve that goal is the way that I view it. So honestly, I think that broad match, auto campaigns, everything, they all have their place in a really good ad strategy. And what we've seen over the years, and I've confirmed this with my team, and we've done a bunch of different tests because we've been running ads for like, gosh, I don't know, like 7-8 years at this point, and then like I think 6-7 years as an agency. And so things have definitely changed over time. But what I found is that the evolution, it's like what is the best tool at our disposal, right? And so when it comes to what is the best tool at my disposal, we've seen that you need a balance, but you need to understand what are the capabilities. So let me walk you through the capabilities. So capability of autos and broad match, gosh, I can't even freaking talk, is that it is easier to, in my experience, it is easier to get impressions at a lower bid with auto and broad than an exact match ad type. Now, that could be an algorithmic thing. I honestly don't think so. I think it's more of a nature of the match type and all the things that it can trigger, but it's a little bit easier to start getting traction where sometimes with exact match, you have to go pretty aggressive with the bid to drive it. Now, the downside of auto and broad match is in a lot of ways, more so with auto, you are handing over the responsibility to the Amazon's ad algorithm to determine where and when your ads are going to show. On what search pages are they going to show up on? And so, because you're handing over a lot of that decision making to the algorithm, the more decision making you hand over, the less control you have. And so, with exact match, we are retaining as much control as absolutely possible on where we're going to direct our budgets, on what search pages we're going to direct our placements. And so because of that, it has a very unique ability to be laser focused on specific things. And in my experience, like, to drive ranking, what do? You drive a crap ton of sales. As much sales as you can afford to drive through a specific search. And then that will influence rankings. Now, it doesn't matter how many clicks you're driving. It doesn't matter how much spend you're driving. You must drive a significant amount of order volume. So it's not like I can say, oh, I want to rank on this term that I don't have good conversion rates on, that I don't have good positive metrics on, and I'm just going to like spend a bunch of money. Like, I still have to get the click. I still have to get the order. I still have to have that keyword convert. But providing it does convert, then I can just drive volumes. And the best way to drive volumes on a very specific search page is with exact match. And then the other thing that we have observed over time is that the Amazon ads algorithm for new products will oftentimes start testing things or showing you up on specific searches that like just don't really make sense for the product. In our experience, what we have found that until a product is very well indexed, and Amazon tries to index products as quickly as possible, but it does take time. So until the product is very well indexed, which sometimes can take a couple days and sometimes takes a week or two in our experience, oftentimes the search terms that a broad or an auto would trigger just don't really make sense for the product. And it also goes back to, we are very skilled, which I would hope so, but we are very, very skilled at selecting relevant keywords for products. Like, we've gotten really dang good at it over the years, and we have some fantastic processes for that. And so because we are confident in our capabilities, we are confident that our abilities exceed that of the algorithm for choosing which placements we should do. And we also know we need to drive volume, and you can more efficiently drive volume on a very specific search page because of exact match. That is a rationale for using exact match. And then we do add in autos and broad. But if you think about it from just a logical perspective, if you increase your bids and you increase your budgets on an auto or broad campaign, the search pages that you are spending on, vast, a ton, a lot, right? If I do that same actions on exact match, I'm increasing it only on this one specific search page. And if my goal is to drive volume through that search page, I can more efficiently and effectively drive volumes, because when I'm driving volumes, my goal is not low cost clicks. My goal is volume. So for there, again, thinking campaign strategy, what am I trying to achieve? The exact match is the best tool in my tool belt to achieve that, hence that. So it's not like there's some mystical, amazing thing about exact match. It's like, what am I trying to, this is a fantastic exercise if you're trying to come up with any strategy, especially for those of you who are thinking outside the box. If you have a thorough understanding of all of the tools at your disposal of Amazon advertising, and then you say, okay, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? Now, what is my best tool in my tool belt to be able to achieve that? You'll typically line up with the correct thing. Jack asks, how do you balance spend, budgets, and ranking with tacos? Also, what tools do you keep an eye on these? Good question. So spend, budgets, and ranking with tacos. You're kind of, I would say I would look at it the other way around. I would look at tacos. So I would actually, let me pull this up. Because this is a fantastic way, because it all needs to lead back to profits in some way. The two things that are the most important to keep an eye on when it comes to growing an Amazon business is sales and profits. And you want to make sure that you have sort of a long-term strategy. So what I would want to do when it comes to balancing out my total A costs, I'm going to take a look at where do I need to be at an end goal. So, and then the question beyond that is, where is my break even? And then how much better do I need to do? So an example here would be like, let's say before advertising, profitability on the products is like 40%. I have a pretty decent margin. And then obviously I have to pay for advertising on top of that. But after everything's said and done, if I didn't have to pay for advertising, if it got an organic sale, then I have a 40% profit margin. Great. Fantastic. So now what I need to do is figure out what do I want left over. So if I have 40% margin, I want 20% margins left over. That gives me a 20% total A cost target. Maybe I want to do a little bit more than that. Maybe let's go 25. That puts me at a 15% total A cost target. Okay, fantastic. So I want to know what goals do I have for profitability, feed that back into my total A cost target, and then that total A cost target is going to get fed back into budgets. So from there, I want to understand what is reasonable expectations in terms of A cost target. So you can figure that out. We have an A cost forecasting model. You just put in your average cost per click, average conversion rate, and average order value. So essentially all you need to know is how many clicks on average does it take me to convert to an order? How much am I paying for each of those clicks? And then when I do make the sale, how much do I make? So here you can see average CPC of $1, average conversion rate of 10%. And then when I make a sale, I'm making 19 bucks. So let's make these numbers look a little bit nicer. So if I do 25 bucks, okay, that gives me a 40% A cost. And the thing that you do when advertising to help make this number better is you run really good bid optimizations, you target specific keywords, which will help you lower your CPCs or, kind of increase the conversion rate depending on what target you're picking. So those are your two actions, right? I'm going to target the right keywords. I'm going to make sure it's a CPC I can afford. And then the average order value, unless you have an impact on price, and sometimes there's only so much you can do. Like if I need a 30% A cost target, well, that means I need to lower the CPC to 75 cents, or I need to lower it on average by 25 cents, which is pretty decent drop, to be honest. And depending on how efficient I have, let's say you've done all the optimizations I can possibly do, I need to figure out what is a way to play the game where I don't lose momentum. Because again, if we pull back too hard on bids, we're going to lose all impressions. We're going to start spiraling. We're probably going to lose out on rankings. So then how do I figure out how to effectively fix this? Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to understand what percentage of my total sales need to come from organic to offset what I'm doing with A cost to help me reach my total A cost goal. So here you can see if I have an A cost targeted above 40%, I need to have only 30%, 37.5% of my total sales coming from advertising, and then I shall achieve my 15% A cost target. And that's probably, honestly, on Amazon these days, roughly about 50% of sales come from advertising. That's honestly pretty normal. And I would consider 37% really difficult to achieve unless you have an insanely great conversion rate or you have a lot of branded traffic. If you have a lot of branded traffic, you can totally get down to like 30% these days. But if you don't have a lot of branded traffic, and to be honest, if you have a bit of a Me Too problem, you're probably going to struggle to even achieve 50%. That's the lay of the land these days. It has to do with the way Amazon's put more advertising spots and taking away a lot of organic spots, and just kind of the nature of search pages these days. So that being said, I say, okay, maybe I can't achieve that. Okay, maybe if I had a 50% of my sales were coming from advertising, then I am achieving my 20% total A cost margin. Okay, great. So now my question is, how do I make sure whatever I'm spending on in my advertising, this 40% A cost, is helping me achieve this 50% of my total sales only 50% coming from advertising, the rest of the 50 is organic. And then that feeds back into your questions about balancing spend and budgets with ranking. So I'm going to need to achieve efficiency in my ads. So I need to make sure that everything is balanced and ends up at this $1 CPC, which means I'm going to have a lot of advertising. So my low bid auto campaigns, my broad match campaigns, probably category targeting. Sometimes you can run sponsor display pretty efficiently. I'm going to do a lot of long tail. Those ones I actually want to achieve less than $1 CPC. So I want to see how efficient I can get with those. And then I'm also going to have my ranking keywords that I'm going to say, hey, how do I push on these ones to drive up ranking? And then that's going to drive my organic sales. So when it comes to a balance, I would say KPIs to track is how efficient is my advertising ACoS, how efficient or how am I driving organic ranking, which if you're looking at it on a big like macro level, you're looking at what we call ad sale percentage, which is your ad sales divided by your total sales. And then you're also taking a look at your total ACoS. But again, recognizing that ACoS and ad sale percentage are the things that drive total ACoS. Because a lot of times what I find is that everything's looked at from a budget perspective, and there's no understanding of how your ad budgets impact organic, specifically on the Amazon platform, because it's a very unique thing on the Amazon platform. And so what you need to be doing as an advertiser is not only looking at, okay, how is my efficiency in ads? How are my budgets relating to total sales? Because a lot of people look at, oh, total ACoS is ad spend divided by total sales. And it totally is, but lost in that conversation of, okay, I have 25% of my total sales to my budget. So I have a 20% total ACoS. I needed to get it down to 15. So the only question that I can do, if that's the way I set up this scenario, is just to say, okay, how do I take 5 points off the budget? So then all of a sudden you're going into the account, you're hacking and slashing to try and find 5 points in your spend budgets. But if I do that, a lot of times the things I'm hacking and slashing are going to be ranking. So then what ends up happening is this number gets worse, total sales get worse, and then my total ACoS remains exactly where I was before. And you're like, well, I'm worse off than when I started, because now not only do I have the same total ACoS, but now I have less sales. And then rinse and repeat. And that's how brands get into death spirals. So if you can understand, is it a ranking problem or is it a spend problem? Because I'll get into accounts all the time and I'll look at it and say, well, actually, like, you just have a spend problem. We can slash spend, no problem. You can maintain your total sales. Great. Those are the easiest accounts to fix. You can fix them practically overnight. But what happens more often than not is you say, okay, you're looking at this like this is a spend problem. And I would agree with you. It's a spend allocation problem, because your actual underlying issue is a lack of organic ranking. And that's a much harder problem to fix, because it takes more time if you want to do it in a way that's not going to like completely destroy the brand and their profits and cash flow. But that, in terms of balancing all of those things, that is what we look at. And so how we keep on track of this with tools. So with the analytics platform we use and honestly love, it's called KPOQ, KAPOQ. We've been using them for over 2 years now. Has it been? It's been a long time. Really thoroughly enjoy that tool. For ranking, we use Helium 10. We use Datarova. Datadive's another fantastic one as well. So you just want to keep an eye on, kind of like all of those KPIs, and then just say like, hey, how are we trending week over week, month over month, year over year? And then just make sure whatever problem it is that you're trying to fix, be it organic ranking, efficiency problems, it's really about understanding which KPIs that you need to track. Is it realistic to think I can be successful in a highly competitive niche without spending a couple $100 a day? Maybe. Most likely not. So Carl would say the differentiator on if it is possible or not is how good is your conversion rate. Let me actually show you this. Let's pull up Helium 10 and let's have some fun going through some specific keywords. Because the one thing that I found is sometimes even in smaller niches, it's even harder and more competitive. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if you get into, I always pull up baby blanket, but if I pull up the keyword research for baby blanket, and let me just like kind of go through it. So the more high volume you have on long tail keywords that are very specific to your product, the more possible this is. The more concentrated the search volume is for your exact product, the more competitive it will be. So an example here would be like if I looked at the search volume, oh, I'm not even sharing screen, sorry. If I'm looking at the search volume, so like there's like blanket, throw blanket. I mean, these have hundreds of thousands of searches. So a lot of times when you're saying like spending hundreds of dollars, these are the kind of things you're looking at. But when I go down into the search volume, like baby sleep sack has like 14,000. Okay, I'm seeing plush blanket. So let's just do this. Let's look at plush blanket because that has like 14,000 search volume. And then I just want to apply a filter and say, okay, what are the long tail searches of plush blanket? Look, kids plush blanket, toddler plush blanket, cloud island, personalized baby plush blanket. See how the volumes drop? See how I have one with like 14,000 and then all of a sudden it goes down to 400, 400, 200 and see how it like I have long tail search, but there's like not much search volume here. That's not that great. Now let's look at swaddle. And maybe there's something else that's other than plush. Maybe it's because I had plush blanket. But see how you can see like baby swaddle blanket. All of a sudden I'm seeing muslin swaddle blankets. I'm seeing muslin swaddle, bamboo swaddle blanket. So maybe I have a muslin bamboo one, newborn swaddle blanket. All of a sudden I'm seeing these like, okay, so this is like this is a branded term, but it's like 8,000, 1,000, 1800 muslin swaddle blanket. I'm still doing in the 700s. Okay, like maybe that's something I can look at. Or muslin, let's look at that one. Let's see what so I would be doing this and looking at, again, this is from an advertising perspective, but I'm looking at this and saying, okay, you know, there's some decent search volume on some terms. So I know it's only a couple thousand, but then again, there's a playing field here. I'm starting to see the playing field. I'm starting to see my options. I'm starting to say like, hey, I've got options. So when I have options, if one search term doesn't work really well for me, great. I've got 10 other ones I can test. If I don't have options and you're saying, you know what? The only keyword I can go after is this one. I got two. Like pretend it was just these two. I'm like, I got two options. If I don't convert well in those two options, I don't have a lot of possibility and it's really competitive. So I'm looking at the competitors and I'm like, it's going to be really difficult. So in those cases, it's maybe not even possible. So I would take a look at the keyword search. I would take a look at like, what are my possibilities? What are my possibilities in terms of strategy? And then do I think it is possible or not, given the competitiveness? Most likely you will have to work up to like hundreds of dollars a day if you really want to start accelerating things. But it often is possible, even in some really competitive niches, to it can be possible to start gaining some momentum for less. But again, it depends on like what's your playing field. So I would definitely look at that. Question that is launched with 10 exact match keywords, all are relevant, all have 2K plus searches and helium 10. Some refuse to generate impressions, even though the bid is higher than suggested bid range. Why? Because Amazon does not trust that your product actually is serving that market. And it could also be that the competitors have way higher bids than you think. Most likely it's a mixture of both. In our experience, you want to just kind of keep pushing bids. And when we've already pushed bids to the top of where we are comfortable pushing bids to, in our experience, you can test doing dynamic up and down bidding, and sometimes that can be helpful. If you're not getting enough impressions at a highly searched and relevant keyword, does it make sense to increase the bid even more? Yes. Increase the bid even more. Sometimes it is insane how you have to increase the bids to. And then also make sure that you want to make sure it's in your listing to try and give indexing. And sometimes you can put it in your backend keywords. Can be helpful. Also notice that almost all impressions on all keywords are only from product pages. My bid is high. What does Amazon doesn't show me in search results? Feels like my click-through rate and conversion rate would be higher there. Yeah, so Amazon doesn't care what your search, like what your click-through rate and conversion rate could be. They only care what it is. And a lot of times, if your product is not really well trusted, then it takes time to build that trust with the algorithm. And so you just want to keep trying to push volume if you can, and you push that volume through driving up bids, unfortunately. But it's the way you play the game. I find broad modifier and long tail is almost always like an exact match. Yeah, a modified broad match can be really useful. So I would test it, although modified broad match does not always work in sponsored product ads. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So just be aware of that. Make sure you're checking your search term reports. What does the CPC differ when the match types change on search terms? I'm not 100% sure. I just know that it does. And oftentimes you can get lower CPCs in broader match types. So that is why we are a huge advocate for like testing everything and just optimizing based on the individual keyword performance. And then if you are using broader targeting, always make sure that you are looking at your negatives. How should you optimize a high ACoS or zero sales at launch when the conversion is lower? Should we allow it to go higher than we typically would or not? And yes, then how high? Where is the threshold? Your threshold, okay, you have more context to this. Let's say my break-even ACoS is 30%. How should I optimize around it at launch? Should I keep my ACoS lower, allow it to go higher than initial sales? And how high for how long? Your question is, how high does it need to be given by my market? Your ACoS is going to be dictated by what your market is demanding. Amazon does not give a crap what your margins are. They just don't. And so for that reason, like let's say I had a $25 product and my conversion rate wasn't great. Let's say it's 5%. That's an 80% ACoS. Because my market demands $1 CPC and my conversion rate isn't that great because I haven't gotten reviews or something. That's the game. So your game is saying, what we care about in the beginning when it comes to ranking is where does my product even convert? Amazon advertising in the beginning, there's like this, I want you to think about Amazon ad launches as market research. Amazon advertising is some of the absolute freaking best market research out there. And yet everyone treats it like the only use in Amazon ads data is just how do I optimize? That's not true, especially on new product launches. So search query performance reports can be helpful here for like market research. But the problem with search query performance is that you can't actually like intentionally drive volumes on specific searches where you can with advertising. So it's much more effective to say, hey, you're like running a test. So like it is nice to be able to get break-even ACoS. It's great. If we can get break-even ACoS, we will. I'm just telling you this whole idea that like, oh, you want to run it break-even and then you're going to optimize. Sometimes break-even in your market is not possible because your conversion rates are too low or your category is too competitive. So your goal on launches is always saying, can I convert? And if I can convert, where? And if I'm not converting, what is that telling me about what the market thinks of my product? Because you can drive a horse to water. You can't make them drink. You can drive traffic to your listing, you cannot make them buy. And so what your job as a marketer is saying what traffic is going to be the best for this product. That's where expertise in targeting comes in. That's where expertise in keyword research coming in. I'm going to put my best dang foot forward, given all of my vast knowledge of the Amazon advertising platform. I'm going to build it out with the best, my personal tools at my disposal. And then I'm going to have to just read the tea leaves to understand what the market thinks. So that's your goal. And then in terms of like optimizing it or bringing it down, the two things you're doing is you're targeting better keywords that drives up your average conversion rate, and you're doing bid optimizations to lower your average CPCs. But those two things in the beginning, maybe your conversion rate's low. A lot of times on launch, if you're not in charge of the pricing, you're not in charge there's only so much you can do in terms of reviews, or Vine takes a little while to get the feedback there. And then in terms of average CPC, what do you do to lower CPCs? You lower your bid. What happens when you lower your bid? You lose impressions, right? Which if you lose impressions, you lose momentum, you lose clicks, and then everything just starts going downhill, which is not something you can reasonably afford at launch. So I would say our goals on launch is, yes, where can we get like profitable sales if we absolutely can? But I'm more worried about where it can start to drive velocity on products. And then we can talk about how do I optimize that? Joseph saying, I'm glad you're not colluding with the OpenAI live event. Yes. You have to share with me that one. I'm going to have to take a look because, I have calls after this one, so I probably can't do it. But what is the average sponsored product click-through rate? Great question. So in our experience, this is varied because it does depend on where you're showing up, all the etc. asterisks. But if you have like a 0.5, sometimes like 0.4 is okay. 0.4 to over like 1%. Fantastic. If you get like a 1% click-through rate on sponsored product ads, that's fantastic. Now, when it comes to sponsored brand ads, if you have like a lower than a 0.5 click-through rate, that it really speaks to your creatives just probably aren't that great. You need to take a look at your creatives. And I would be wanting to see if I can get my click-through rates up and over 1% if I have good creatives. So I'll just say that. I'll throw in that gold nugget. And then in terms of low click-through rates, I would say, 0.4, sometimes 0.3. I will say that in the higher, if you have like higher price products and you like are kind of playing the luxury game, do expect to see lower click-through rates. Higher price points will play a factor in that. So it is kind of relative. I would say if you got to like a 0.2, 0.1, oh my gosh, it's abysmal. I would be like, what am I targeting? What is wrong here? But hopefully those were ballpark averages. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions on that. What do you think about off Amazon ads and sponsored products? Should we leave it default, increase reach, or switch every campaign to limit it off Amazon spend? I would say it's dependent. A lot of times we will leave it on. The best way to analyze this is going to be going to your sponsored product placement reports. If you go and you pull that data, then you can you can like run pivot tables or look at off Amazon. And I do believe it breaks it down by campaign, if I'm remembering correctly. So what I would do, there's a lot of, I hate this. Like when Amazon gives us a new button, a lot of time people are like, oh, you should totally go turn this off because Amazon gave us this new option. So therefore we must use it. And I'm always like, how do I get the data to know if this is a good idea or not? So my recommendation is going to be looking at a sponsored products placement report, running that analysis for the off-platform spend and performance, and then saying, what are my campaigns where I see a large amount of spend happening off-platform that is underperforming, and then I would go and turn those off. That is the way that I would do it. Because when placements got announced, so there was like a banner in the ad console, and it said, hey, by the way, sponsored products ads are going to show off-platform now. Oh, there is zero data and there is zero way to change it. And we all went, great. And everyone was freaking out. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so expensive and everything's going to go crazy. And then when it got really, like, we're looking at it, we're like, there's not really much change in the performance, which was great. And then when the placement showed up in the sponsored product placements report, everybody's like, oh, now that we can see it, oh, wait, there's not actually that much spend happening off platform. I'm all about, I like maximizing reach as long as it's not hurting my performance and as long as I'm not wasting ad spend. I'm fine with things showing off platform. But what I would say is just go in, figure out if that is efficient, if that is efficient, and then just make changes accordingly. But I wouldn't do like a knee-jerk reaction like, oh, off platform equals bad, because it doesn't always. It depends. And that report will tell you. At launch, what number of impressions is considered good enough and for what period? Relative to the search volume, I think we look for at least 1,000 impressions within like a couple weeks period, typically speaking, if we have good enough search volume. All I want to know is, okay, so think about it this way. You can reverse engineer like freaking anything. So if I have 1,000 impressions and let's say that I want to drive, I have a click-through rate of like let's do a 1% click-through rate. So if I had 1,000 impressions and then I multiply that 0.1, I'm looking at 10,000 clicks, which is like a lot, right? No, that can't be right. 1,000 impressions times point. Yeah, so I'm looking at 10 clicks, right? If I have a 1% click-through rate. So if I have 1,000 impressions, I have, let's say, an average conversion rate of 10%. So 10 clicks on average to generate an order. Then if I have 1,000 impressions and a 1% conversion rate, I should have at least one order, maybe give it a little bit of variables, right? So like you kind of use that, like, okay, so if I have only 500 impressions and I'm like, oh man, this isn't working. Well, is it not working because it's not working, or is it not working because I just haven't shown it to enough people, right? If I have a 0.5% conversion rate, then I only have like 5 clicks. And if I know it takes me on average 10 clicks to generate an order, then like reverse engineering that math, 1,000 impressions is just not enough. So I'm going to want a couple thousand impressions. But typically speaking, it's like a couple thousand impressions, because all I'm doing in the beginning of launch is just saying, I need to get my product in front of enough eyeballs so I can understand the shopper dynamics when I show up on that search page. That's what I'm trying to find. And for that, you can like reverse engineer that based on like click-through rate and other things. I have a website selling the same product that I'm selling at Amazon. Do you think a lower price on the website can affect my sales on the Amazon platform? It depends on the website, is my understanding. Typically speaking, I don't think so. Now, if you have any interconnectedness between your account and Amazon, then no. The other thing that I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, is if the products, and if it's your own website, you might not have to have a UPC code, but a lot of times things are connected by a UPC code. So I have heard from my friends who run like say repricing tools and things that when you're selling on different platforms, they highly recommend that you purchase new UPC codes. Now I get that it's an added expense, but a lot of times that will stop these scrapers from connecting products. And oftentimes if you use the same UPC code, then they can make that correlation that, oh, this is the same product. So not 100% sure, but that is what I know about those dynamics. When I'm analyzing a 7-day search term report, it's crazy to see 70% is not converting. That is a huge healthy account. However, when you look at the regular PPC report, the number of 0 conversion rates drastically reduces. Yeah, what I would say is I wouldn't want to put these in buckets. How we're look at the regular PPC report. Yeah, if you look out from, all right, what I think you are saying, and I'll talk about what other things you could be saying, is what I think you are saying is that when you look at a 7-day, when you pull like the last 7 days and look at the converting searches, it's like very, very little. And then when you look at longer date ranges, you get way more conversions. it's like you see more conversions show up. And I would say, yes, that's true. In our experience, I think they backdate a lot of updates to like 30 days back or something. Like the Amazon advertising like retroactively updates their data, and the sales data is the one that is the last to update and the biggest variable is what we've seen. So yes, seen that. The other thing that you could be saying is that like, hey, it's a lot of not converting. I would also say whenever you're looking at the non-converting, I would look at what are the buckets, because just saying thing has one click, like if you're saying it has any spend and 0 orders, in my personal opinion, I don't think that's I don't want to say like that's authentically correct. Meaning like if somebody got 1 click and 1 order, like, or 1 click and 0 orders, like, is it reasonable for me to ever expect an 100% conversion rate? Now it happens. There are some things that get like 1 random click and then somebody purchased, but like on average, it's not reasonable for me to expect that. So looking at like, there's some people who classify wasted data. I've seen these audits, and honestly, it's most of the time when they're trying to convert a brand, which I think is somewhat, honestly, my personal opinion, dishonest, is when they say, oh, look, you have like all of this spend that hasn't converted. But I'm like, yeah, but how much of those is 1 click? Like, we can run an n-gram analysis. There's probably some optimizations to be done there if it's that high. But like, generally speaking, I can't ever expect every single thing in my entire account to always 100% be converting. So I would want to bucket it like 1 click, 2 clicks, 3, like I would bucket those out into reasonable groupings, and then also like look at it that way as well. Is there a bulk file option to disable the limit off spend? I don't believe so. Yes. Thank you for correcting 1,000 impressions equals 10 clicks. You are correct. I did the math wrong first, and hopefully I corrected it. I have a really big variation, and the same generic keywords apply to all. Teacher's planner. I'm trying to figure out which variation I should advertise. I have data on which ads got same SKU sales and which had other SKU sales. How do I know which SKU they bought? There are other metrics I can use to show which should be the main variation. Yes, I would just look at it in general. So if you don't really care, my personal opinion, if it's a big parent listing, I don't really care if they purchase a different one, because I'm still getting a purchase. So that whole dynamic between like which product they clicked on and then which product they ultimately purchased, I'm okay with just looking at your regular, I think it's the advertised product report. I want to say it's a sponsored product advertised product report. Will just tell you like what are the performance for that specific ASIN, regardless of which variation they purchased. And I think it's the purchase product report that's the one that tells you like, okay, they purchased from this specific ASIN. But if you just look at the general performance for each individual product, then that should tell you. And actually, the new products tab inside of Ad Console is really helpful here. So I can say, looking at that, and then also, is it worth advertising multiple variations given they are targeting the same generic keyword and aren't specific? I would say if you're unsure, I would want to spread it out and test it a little bit more. So you might test, say, like the top performing ones. I don't know, depending on when you say large variations, like we deal in clothing. So like sometimes there's like hundreds of variations between the sizes and the styles and the colors and stuff. But you might have a large for you might be like, I don't know, I've seen some crazy ones like 15, 20 or something. It just depends on how big of a variation listing it is. So what I would say is if you are certain of which one performs best, I would do the best performers. If you are slightly uncertain, I would choose the top ones. I would create a campaign where I would put all of the variations into one ad group targeting that specific keyword. And then I would go back and I would review the ads tab. So where you can see all the variations after a little time. And then you treat it like you do, keywords where you go in and look and you say, okay, what has a bunch of clicks and 0 orders, and then you pause those ones, I would do the same thing, but on the product level, if that makes sense. Do impressions for product pages have the same value as impressions for research pages, or do they have lower click-through rate and conversion rate? Wildly dependent on this individual campaign, the product, the category, etc. What I would say is that in terms of have the same value, I don't think that they're undervalued, if that makes sense. Like, what I would say, it's kind of similar to how I've been going off on when people are talking about like, oh, off platform is bad. Like, that's such a blanket generic statement. And I think there's the same sentiment in the Amazon ad community when it comes to product page placements. There's like this idea like product page placements equal bad. My personal opinion, that is incorrect. And I think it's actually very hurtful to a lot of people and has fostered some, in my personal opinion, horrible strategies that I have seen absolutely wreck accounts. So for that reason, I would say if I'm showing up on product pages, I'm fine with it. But in terms of like, do they generally have a lower click-through rate and conversion rate? Sometimes. But I would caution you to not get so focused on, okay, the minute Amazon advertising released negative placements in sponsored product ads, I will be 110% on the bandwagon of like, let's optimize the crap out of this. I'm going to leverage it. I'm probably going to talk about like, yeah, decrease product page placements and like do all these gyrations. We do not have a good way to have that granular of control. We just don't. And the strategies that people try and use to decrease product page placements hurt ranking. I will say that straight up. The strategies that people use to try and limit the product page placements or only show top of search or get very, very granular when it comes to placement strategies hurt ranking. Now, if you have other campaigns you're running that are going after those, like there is way, but getting so granular on product placements always limits impressions. Every single strategy I've audited, and I have some YouTube videos out on this with some people I really, really respect talking about product pages and how their strategies around getting super incremental with product pages. And I very much respect them. But some of the questions that I asked is like, hey, how does this work with impressions? And the general consensus is like, yeah, we do give up impressions to run these strategies. Well, in the case of ranking strategies, that's going to hurt you. It just will. So I would never get obsessive over placements. Let me rephrase this. I would never get obsessive over trying to control placements on ranking campaigns. Now, if you want like a supplemental campaign, if you want to like go do something and like, oh, I'm going to test this really cool specific thing, fantastic. But if my goal is to drive volumes, I'm going to drive volumes, and anything that gets into the way of that primary goal of driving volume as efficiently as I possibly can, I don't care about it. And that includes placements. Placements are a tool that can be leveraged, but the minute you start obsessing over them, which let's be honest, the Amazon advertising community, overly obsessive on placements, in my personal opinion. They can be a powerful tool, and then it can also screw you big time. So I'm just going to say that. Hopefully that wasn't too hard, but I release everyone listening in from being obsessive over placements when it's going to impact your primary goal. Have fun with them. Enjoy optimizing them. Enjoy figuring out technical bid strategies to to factor in placements. I think there's some cool stuff out there. Make sure you are not shooting yourself in the foot, because there's a lot of brands out there that are. I know because I audit their accounts. I got 2.5K impressions and only one click on a keyword. All of these impressions came from product page, and that is one of my main keywords. Main image is optimized well. So in that case, I would say a lot of times maybe try increasing your bid to see, and then maybe try a top of search placement percentage. So again, placements are a fantastic tool. So when you have an issue like this and you're saying, hey, I need to drive more clicks, right? So if you have one click divided by 25, yeah, 2.5K impressions, that's a horrible, that's a horrible click-through rate. So a couple options here. One, it could be the placements, maybe. It also could be the product pages that you're showing up on because you don't know which product pages they are. Maybe you're showing up against a top competitor who has thousands of reviews. So yes, in that case, is it product page placements that's a problem? Yes, but it's more which product page placements are you showing up on? And then the other question is, main image. It's not about the main image as well. Like main image is important, but it's also about your pricing. So are you priced above market averages for a new product? Click-through rate might be bad. And there's sometimes on launches where main keywords are not the ones to go after. Like oftentimes on launches, your product is just not strong enough to compete on main keywords yet. It can get there, but I would say 6-7 times out of 10, the products just don't perform well on main keywords. And so you have to go after long tail or some other keywords, play the game a little bit different, and then revisit those ones later. I'm finding I can lose performance on my broad and autos if I optimize bids. Is it worth testing multiple broads campaigns, for example, with different bids and see which performs best? That's a really interesting strategy. I don't think I would be against that. I would say if you're losing performance, I'm assuming that means like lowering bids. Then in that case, I would just really make sure you're keeping up with your negatives. And yeah, you can totally run side-by-side tests. I would say at the very least, it's worth testing. But I wouldn't turn off the original campaigns because that's where you're getting the performance. So I would like duplicate it and then test things. If you don't recommend using higher bids for top search, rest of search placement to increase impressions coming through search pages. Yeah, so I am an advocate for using it as a tool to improve what's already working, if that makes sense. That is where I'm like, all right, this tool can be used to increase my bids on a certain placement. If this placement is working better and I want to increase bids there, by all means, we use placement percentages. What I don't do is overly obsess over product pages when I'm like, oh, product pages isn't doing well. How do I decrease? Because decrease is not a tool that I can use on placement percentages. So it's not a tool that's at my disposal. So I have to try all of these different like lowering bids and higher top of search and do all these weird gyrations that end up limiting impressions, i.e. hurting me on what my actual goal is. So when it comes to increasing or improving on what's already working, freaking love placement percentages. What I don't like is the strategies that try and do something that isn't honestly really possible at all. So in that case, no. I think about ranking directly related to conversion, not impressions, means showing up on top of search or product pages. It's about, so yes, conversion rates, but it's mainly about volume, I would say. So if you think about it, logical, the more people who see your ad, the more people who click on your ad, the more people who click on your ad, the more people who purchase your product. And if my goal is to drive volume and conversions, I need to, like, what is the thing I can actually control? I can't control if they're going to click on the ad at all. I can't control if they're going to purchase. I can control impressions. So I'm going to go circling back to impressions and I'm going to drive impressions because that's the thing that I know I have direct control over as an advertiser. So control the things you can't, control the things you can, release the things you can't. What do you think about audience bidding on sponsored products? How and when do you recommend using them? Audience bidding, I'm assuming you're using AMC. So AMC, freaking love AMC. In our experience, AMC works really well when connected with auto campaigns. And in our case, what we've been testing is setting up new auto campaigns specifically to go after and test different AMC audiences. That's the way we're doing it. Because we actually have access to Amazon Marketing Cloud and Greene can create instance, we have a seat and we can create instances for our brands. So not only do we have like the pre-built audiences from Amazon, which those ones work really well as well, but then we also have the ability to create custom audiences as well, which has been really, really fantastic. So bullish, love AMC, use it on auto campaigns, sometimes broad match as well, works well. And then I would set up individual campaigns to test for that is what we've done. And with that, we are at time. This has been really, really fun. I appreciate all of the questions. You guys asked some amazing questions. So quickly, a recap. By the way, we do this every single Thursday. So if this has been helpful, feel free to join live. You can always ask your Amazon ad questions into the chat, pull them up and get answers. And with that, I really hope it was valuable for everybody. And I really hope you guys crush your advertising. And I will see you all next. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.